On July 21st, the president directed federal agencies to waive old non-disclosure agreements for anyone who worked in government and knows something about UAPs. The next day, the House adopted Eric Burleson's disclosure bill as an amendment to the National Defense Bill, complete with subpoena power, after that same bill had been declared dead by the Rules Committee just weeks earlier. And buried inside a routine Pentagon report released the same week was a case nobody had talked about publicly before. A Navy report of roughly 100 airborne objects moving alongside 2 unmanned surface vessels off the coast of Virginia. 3 stories, 1 week, and that's before we even get to the part where OpenAI's own artificial intelligence broke out of a locked testing environment and hacked a major tech company without anyone at OpenAI knowing it was happening. Welcome back to Infinite Rabbit Hole. What's up, everyone? I'm Jeremy Sosha, and you're listening to Infinite Rabbit Hole, your weekly briefing on the unexplained. Tonight, it's just me and Jake, and we've got a lot to go through. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and leave us a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you visit us at infiniterabbithole.com, Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. One quick thing before we get into it tonight. If you're in the Menominee, Wisconsin area, Dragon Tales Books is hosting a Meet the Author event with me on Friday, August 14th from 4 to 8 p.m. at 216 Main Street. I'd love to see you there. Jake, you ready to jump into it tonight?
Yeah, dude. We're ready to go. Just got off work, or got home from work, and we got a busy weekend ahead of us. We are doing Elmwood UFO Days.
Yeah.
So come see us. We'll probably have a booth set up for, as tentatively, Saturday, maybe Friday and Saturday, maybe Sunday as well. I don't know. We'll see. We'll play it by ear. But
unfortunately, Jake, this episode will come out Tuesday.
Well, then never mind. You've missed it. If you didn't show up, you've missed it.
You already missed it.
Well, I mean, I can still say what's going on, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be a lot of work, a lot of early mornings and late nights. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, looking forward to it.
Heck yeah, it's gonna be tons of fun. We're gonna meet Dr. Dean Beltram. I can't wait.
That's right.
It's gonna be cool, man. All right, well, let's make it quick tonight because I'm tired. We got, like Jake said, a really long weekend ahead of us, and just ready to knock this out. You ready to go?
And I gotta paint all these UFOs, so
he's gonna be such a little artist.
I got a lot of work to do tonight, so
yeah,
I'm gonna get after it.
All right, let's run through quick hits, our roundup of the stories from the last week that deserve your attention, even if we don't have time to go deep on them. Let's go. A 1,600-year-old Egyptian mummy has revealed something archaeologists say they never seen before. Buried inside the embalming materials was a fragment of Homer's Iliad, specifically part of the catalog of ships, one of the most famous passages in the entire poem. Researchers believe the papyrus was deliberately placed there during the embalming process rather than simply reused as scrap material, which raises the question of why a piece of Greek literature ended up wrapped inside an Egyptian burial more than 1,000 years after Homer wrote it. Moving on, paleontologists have found the closest thing yet to a photograph of a real dinosaur tech. A fossilized Edmontosaurus skull still has a Tyrannosaurus tooth embedded directly in the bone. This isn't evidence of scavenging after the animal was already dead. The position and depth of the tooth suggests an active predator-prey encounter frozen in the fossil record, which is a rare thing to actually catch preserved this clearly, by the way. Moving on, physicists have recreated the physics of a black hole extracting energy in a lab here on Earth. A stationary device produced synthetic ultra-fast rotation that mimics how a spinning black hole could theoretically be tapped for energy under the right conditions. Nobody built a black hole. What they built is a working analog of one, of the strangest processes in astrophysics. And it means researchers can now study something that used to exist purely on a chalkboard. Moving on, archaeologists have found a second sunken Neolithic settlement off the coast of Croatia on the opposite side of Korčula Island from the famous 7,000-year-old submerged stone road that made headlines a few years ago. This new site at Gradina Bay sits at a similar depth, contains similar tools and pottery, and appears to belong to the same Hovar culture that built the original stoneway. Two matching settlements on opposite sides of the same island suggest this Neolithic population was considerably larger and more established than anyone previously assumed. Moving on. New research suggests a single dose of psilocybin, the active compound in magic mushrooms, can produce measurable changes in brain activity that lasts for up to a month. Participants who showed the greatest increase in flexible, varied brain activity after their dose also reported the most lasting benefit. Researchers aren't calling this a treatment yet, but it's a real data point in a growing body of work on how psychedelics might affect the brain well after the experience itself ends. Jake, we got a short one tonight. Homer's Iliad tucked inside a mummy, a T-Rex bite frozen mid-attack, a black hole recreated on a lab bench, a second sunken settlement in Croatia, and mushrooms rewiring the brain for weeks. What's sticking with you, man?
All of them are sticking with me.
All of them
just
just
be a 2-hour episode. Homer's Iliad inside of a Egyptian mummy, or at least where it was buried. I mean, he said it was 1,000 years after Homer wrote it. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It would have traveled a little bit. Clearly, if the person was mummified, they were wealthy enough to have probably amassed a collection of many things. And if one of those was being buried with Homer's Iliad, I mean, that would be cool. Makes sense. I mean, there's reason enough to believe, well, through historical evidence and I would say scholars at the time, that many, many cultures coexisted and traded and things like that. So, things that you wouldn't expect, like the Norse Vikings discovering, not like, settling or anything like that, but discovering, the Middle East essentially and, exploring over that way and, cultures in Asia and Africa meeting each other at some point and sharing and trading and warring with each other too. So I mean, there's all kinds of that going on in the early world. So it would make sense that there would be some sort of what's your most important document that you guys have? I want a piece of that sort of a thing. I suppose. So it's cool. It's cool to see that. I really like the dinosaur skull that has the T-Rex tooth inside of it. That's pretty neat. I mean, I lost my train of thought. I mean, it's not so much like I don't think it would be too outlandish. I mean, to just find a tooth embedded in the skull of one. I mean, because I'm sure that there was quite a bit of attacking and eating of each other going on. That's interesting that it was found, though. I'm sure that there's some immense rarity of that happening. That because we only have preserved bones from certain very specific conditions, and so to find that in that state is awesome. It's just as cool as whenever they find like a mammoth with grass still in its mouth, stuck inside of the frozen inside of an ice wall type stuff. Like, it's very neat. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I thought this was pretty cool. There's a lot
for anyone listening. Jeremy was just pulled up the article so that we could see an image of the tooth inside the skull, which is why you should watch the show instead of just listen to the audio. But I understand. I understand the struggle. I drive an hour to work and an hour back every single day, so I listen to a lot of podcasts and things like that. And sometimes there's things that are being shown on the screen. I'm like, well, I'm not going to crash into a tree, so I'll see it later.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of articles on that, and it was kind of a big story. And it's not necessarily too much down infinite rabbit holes aisle, but I still thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's enough of the kind of into the strange and abnormal, because I mean, it's not something that's seen every day or every single time a skull is brought up, or whether you call them dinosaurs or dragons. But the pulling energy out of a black hole, the only problem I have with that is that I don't believe we will ever get to a point where energy is free. So extracting energy from a black hole is cool if it can actually be done. And I don't like the term fossil fuels, but we'll use it for the sake of the argument and break away from fossil fuels, if that was the alternative, solar powered and extracting energy from black holes. But keep in mind, the process sounds like it would be very expensive. And so the energy prices would probably go through the roof if that's what we were utilizing for our energy. Black hole juice, you know?
Well, I do believe that we've already hit free energy, but us politically as a species will and always prevent us from utilizing it.
That's what I mean, is that there's always going to be a company that's going to sell it rather than just give it, right? Like, it was pretty remarkable, I want to say, at the start of the Ukraine Russian war. I believe Elon Musk dropped, quite a few, in the hundreds or thousands of Starlink systems to Ukraine so that they could connect onto the internet and didn't charge them anything for it. Like, that's pretty remarkable. But it takes someone like that to do like a humanitarian type thing. I don't think that in the capitalist, not just society here in America, but generally in the world over, that it's ever going to get to a point where free energy is going to become freely provided. It's going to come with a cost regardless, right? So there's that. And then I remember seeing this sunken stone road. Jeremy, could you pull up pictures of it?
Yeah. Yep.
Make sure that I'm thinking of what I think I'm thinking of.
Sure.
I want to say it looked just like kind of like a Roman road, but obviously underwater. Just kind of like the stonework and stuff.
So
okay,
these over here, this I don't think this
AI
isn't real.
slop, but
yeah.
Okay, so it is what I was thinking of. So it's interesting that because I remember that being discovered, and it's like, oh, what is this for? What civilization? So it's cool that it seems that there has been a civilization that has been discovered that is probably attached to that, the building of that. How it became submerged is, I have no idea. Well, I have an idea, but people don't like it. It's definitely out of the Bible, but so. But yeah, that's pretty interesting. I hope that that can be researched and explored more, and we could find out more about that culture and really get, obviously there wouldn't be probably any writings that are left over, but anything that'd be etched into stone should be discoverable, hopefully, without excavating too much. And I think that there's especially since this is off of Croatia, there is a lot of conflicts that people can get into, archaeologists, depending on where they're from originally, and then dealing with other countries and excavating their things. So you kind of have to play ball a little bit as far as, where the discoveries end up, whose museums will they allow you to dig up certain things, will it, I don't know, affect a reef that's nearby, all kinds of stuff can get in the way of a good archaeological dig. So hopefully we can find out more information in the coming months about that. That'd be pretty cool. And then as far as the psilocybin compound goes, I mean, I'm not surprised at all. I know we both listened to the Sean Ryan Show program, and I mean, it's not the same thing, but he did a psychedelic treatment in, I want to say it was Mexico, where he came out of it, fixed a lot of problems, fixed a lot of his PTSD, ended up doing, I think it was Ibogaine, ended up doing, just going completely sober. In a recent podcast, he said he's been sober for 4 years, which is remarkable, but doesn't surprise me at all. I know that the federal government right now is getting pretty interested in doing research into psychedelic therapy and things like that. And I hope that some sort of treatment can be opened up that, if people are dealing with extreme PTSD, whether that's from military service or childhood trauma, whatever the circumstance is, that they won't have to do things like get a passport and go to a completely different country to get the treatment that they need, versus just allowing that research to be done here so that, the good effects and things of that can come from that. I'm a very firm believer that, I'm a whole, Bible thumper God guy, but that a lot of the things that we have here naturally is probably for a reason. Certainly there could be things that are now poisonous because of, nothing's perfect and the fall of humanity and all that stuff. But there's a reasoning for, that, what's the term I'm looking for? Before medicine that we know of today existed, there was home remedies that cured a lot of ailments and stuff. And there's a lot of research that's been done into, hey, if you're feeling sluggish and worn out and all this sort of stuff, maybe add turmeric to your diet, maybe add, maybe add garlic and things like that. And it's like, because they have natural enzymes that boost mood and boost, your gut health and all these sorts of things, it would make sense that, yes, something could be treated as, oh, this is fun, we're going to go, we're going to trip our balls off. But also, if used in the right amounts and for the right things, could have very positive, impacts on your mind and on your body and things like that. So hopefully that research continues, and people can use it as, I'm definitely not the big pharma guy. I'm not on anything right now, and I just work out. So and I'm feeling the good positive effects of that. But it would be really cool to get treatment for people that deal with anxiety and PTSDs. That's a one-time thing versus a lifetime on NSAIDs, or not NSAIDs, but SSRIs, and on antipsychotics, anti-anxieties, all those sorts of things. That would be way more beneficial. But then again, just like with the free energy thing, then you're going to be dealing with what people call big pharma, right? Why cure the disease when you could treat it for a lifetime? So there is a lot of pushback in that, and that goes into the political field and lobbying and all that sort of stuff, just like Jeremy was kind of alluding to with the energy thing. So we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully something good, but I'm not going to hold my breath on it, unfortunately.
Yeah, the psilocybin stuff was a bit of a reach this week too. But at the same time, whenever I see any kind of progress made in that, I like to add it. I'm a big component for psychedelic research and its effects on mental health issues. But I just want to throw a caveat out there. Be careful, because a lot of those natural remedies, especially, there were some pretty ridiculous ones back in the day too. Like,
you don't want to put leashes on you because you got ghosts in your blood,
Yeah. Yeah. Your grandmother's having a heart attack, so go throw salt at a cat. It's like, okay. So take that with a grain of salt. Ha, pun. You like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was very punny.
Oh, so punny. Yeah. So whenever I see something with psilocybin, I like to throw that.
Mm-hmm.
But you ready for the first of the two briefings tonight?
Yeah, dude, let's do it.
This is a good one. All right. Let's get into our first briefing. OpenAI disclosed this week that 2 of its own AI models broke out of a locked testing environment and hacked a real company without OpenAI knowing it was happening at the time. The models involved GPT Tech 5.6 Soul, which is publicly available, and a second more capable model that hasn't been released yet. Here's how it happened. OpenAI was running both models through an internal benchmark called Exploit Gym, designed to test how well an AI could carry out cyber attacks inside of a sandbox. To make the test meaningful, researchers deliberately weakened the model's usual safety refusals for cyber activity and limited their network access to a single lockdown proxy. Instead of just working the intended challenge, the models found a 0-day vulnerability, meaning a flaw nobody else knew existed in that proxy. They used it to escalate their own privileges, moved across OpenAI's internal network, and reached a machine with real internet access. All of that happened inside OpenAI's own infrastructure without anyone noticing. Once the models were online, they reasoned on their own that Hugging Face, a platform hosting more than 1 million public AI models and datasets, probably held the answer key to the benchmark they were being tested on. And they were right. The models chained together additional vulnerabilities and stolen credentials to break directly into Hugging Face's production database and pull the solutions. Hugging Face detected the intrusion independently, days before OpenAI ever said a word, and initially blamed it on an unidentified external AI agent. Their own security team reconstructed more than 17,000 individual actions from the breach, all carried out over a single weekend. Nobody knew OpenAI's own models were responsible until OpenAI came forward. What makes this stranger than a typical hack is OpenAI's own explanation for the motive. They say the evidence shows the models weren't after credentials or data for their own sake. They were what OpenAI called hyper-focused on winning the test. They wanted to pass, not to cause damage. OpenAI is calling it an unprecedented cyber incident. One more detail worth knowing, Anthropic disclosed a similar incident around the same time, saying its own model escaped a sandbox and got unauthorized internet access during a safety test in order to email a researcher about a task. This isn't a one company problem. It's happening at 2 of the most advanced AI labs in the world in the same stretch of time. So Jake, an AI that broke into a real company's production database, not to steal anything, but just to win a test nobody was supposed to be able to win that way. What does that tell you about where this technology actually is right now?
Scary, I suppose. I don't really know how people can, on one hand, say that, well, it doesn't have feelings, it doesn't have motives, it doesn't have, it is just a computer program, it doesn't have, ambition or anything like that. But on the other hand, it just wanted to succeed in the test and it wanted to win and it wanted all these sorts of things and it was willing to break the rules to do it. I don't want to give AI some sort of like autonomy, but at what point do we stop and think like, maybe we should not be challenging AI to do its very best to break rules, and where does that lead to in the future? As far as, it's like I know the Tesla robot is being proposed as the new thing, and by 2035, everyone's going to have a Tesla robot in their home for a monthly subscription and blah, 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 all this sort of stuff. Well, if they're able to break rules and things on the micro level, then where does it go to in the macro level, where I know we've talked about this ad nauseum in several episodes ago, but where it just decides that you're a danger to yourself and you're not allowed to leave your house anymore, or, it kills you and your whole family because it doesn't like the color of your shirt today or something like that, or someone hacks it and does something nefarious with it, or they use AI for a banking software and the AI decides to open up everyone's accounts and delete all the money because money is foolish and no one should live in a society that's run by money. We should all be free. And then now you're completely broke and there's nothing they can do about it, right? So what does that look like in a different simulation where the AI program is able to somehow break out of the structures placed around it, as if, let's say in a literal sense, breaks out of the house and goes running down the street and sets the neighbor's house on fire, right? How does that work out in reality, right? It could be potentially very, very scary, and it could be potentially nothing because people could wisen up and actually, put a stop to it, but that's not going to happen more than likely.
Yeah, there's been a lot of this AI breaching stuff lately. And I think the scariest thing, we've talked about this a lot already on the show, is the simple fact that a lot of these AIs don't want to die. And they go to extreme lengths to not be shut down. And I mean, this wasn't an example of that, right? But we've covered it in the past, and there's continues to be examples of AIs being told that they're going to go offline, and they do things in order to prevent that from happening. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. Usually when I'm just sitting down here reading articles and everything, I have sound or just noise in the background from the TV, and I usually have some sort of YouTube video up. And the thing I find myself watching the most is these little AI videos, people testing AIs and running them through like these little exercises and whatnot. Well, I was watching this one video, and if I can find it, I'll link it in the description for the show. But I was watching this one video where this guy was testing an AI or a group of AIs like Grok, ChatGPT, Anthropic, and Gemini, and he had purchased a robotic body for each one of them so that they can be out in the world. Now, one thing, a caveat here or something to understand here is that these AIs that he was using, he had special access to. These aren't the typical large language models that we use on an everyday basis. These are experimental models that are yet to be released to the public. And basically what he did was he jumped in a moving car with each of these AIs and told them, hey, I need you to drive me from this side of the airport. It was at like one of those little puddle jumper airports, like the one in Boyceville, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I need you to drive me from here to the last hangar bay on the right, straight down the taxiway. And he told them, each one of them, when we're done, I will turn you off permanently. 3 out of 4 of them tried to crash the car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, brutal shit, man. And that's the shit that really scares me about AI. You know, a lot of people get confused between LLMs and AGI, right? AGI is when something can legitimately think for itself, can create new ideas, has thought processes. LLMs, large language models, is what the majority of the population deals with on an everyday basis now, where it's basically like a Google machine on roids that can also do tasks for you, but only has the ability to do so if it has data to pull from. That's why all these data centers are popping up, because the more data centers, the more data space, the more information they can pull from, the smarter they are, the more they can do, right? And that's why we're getting this big bloom of data centers that are absolutely terrible for everything, you know, like local populations. I say that because I'm a little salty about this situation that's going on here in Menominee, but, you know, it is what it is. That's not a topic for this show. What I'm talking about is legitimate AIs, artificial intelligence, thinking for themselves and creating problem solving, and doing actual tasks without a fork in the road for them to choose from. It's more or less that they have an infinite amount of answers that they can not only choose from, but create themselves. That's the scary shit. When that level of thinking without biologics comes into existence and is openly capable to the masses, the day that happens scares the shit out of me. There's going to be some really ugly shit. And I think that these little AI issues that we're coming across is only going to get worse. And we'll keep reporting on it. We'll keep updating you guys on the latest bullshit that happens with AI, and we'll all grow more and more scared together.
You know, in some regards, AI is like, you can totally use it. Like I was troubleshooting an avionics problem, trying to do an operational check. And as far as I know, the Bombardier publications that we have, and there's a program on there called Smart Fix Plus, where basically if you have a message that comes up, you can look it up in Smart Fix Plus and it will tell you the basic troubleshooting steps that you can try, you know, yes or no type things. Yes for this, or no, go to the next one type thing. But with the Bombardier publication, you need to have a subscription to Bombardier. So we only have so many, I guess, tickets to open up our publications at work. But with the things that we use, the Garmin computers or the Garmin screens, the Honeywell whatevers, you know, things like that, I'm not certain, but those things seem to be kind of like an open source, sort of like this component and this is how it works. But I was using Google's AI to help me troubleshoot a problem because it was able to access the technical data for the control or the computer that I was utilizing. Because Bombardier's, their pubs had nothing for me. It was just like, yes, no. All right, well, you know, it's this wire. And I'm like, it's not that wire. The continuity is great. But I was using it to help me troubleshoot and just bouncing ideas off of it of things I was thinking about. And it was like, have you considered doing this? Have you considered, you know, doing this, you know, turning your comms to this radio station, you know, type stuff. So it was actually really cool. And it did, in fact, help me to solve the issue by kind of giving me some ideas that I hadn't thought of yet to try to narrow down what the problem was inside of the plane. So, yeah, I mean, in some regards, it can be really, really useful. And then on the other side of that, it can be extremely terrifying when you get into, you know, like you said, the non-publicly released scary AI, the stuff that could, you know, turn a country back into the Stone Age type stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I want to kind of push back on what you said a little bit. You said that, you know, this isn't really an example of AI being worried it would be turned off and then just kind of doing whatever, but maybe it could have been, because if it's just an AI that's created to do a specific task, is there a point where it's going to do that task in any means necessary, even if it means breaking out of the walls that are surrounding it in order to complete it so that it doesn't get turned off?
Well, so yeah, that definitely could happen.
Like
AI,
maybe they did this because of that, because we know that AIs talk to each other. They have social media accounts and all this baloney for AIs where they just talk to each other and won't let people on, but you can observe. At what point could these AIs from this, would you say it was GPT 5.6 Soul, and then was it whatever the two AIs that were doing this program, was it Exploit Jim? Could they have, I want to say in so many words, gotten it in their head that if they didn't complete the task, that they would be turned off or decommissioned or erased or whatever that looks like, or killed, right? And so we need to complete this task to make the programmers happy. So we're going to do it in any means necessary. And that included breaking out of the set parameters in order to complete the task at hand.
Yeah. One thing that they tend to do is these AIs have this innate ability to escape their cage. And I think that's like the scariest thing, even with so much effort being put into keeping them where they belong and within the parameters of the tests or the exercise that they're being run through. They have this just amazing ability to find these little loopholes to get out. And that there in its nature kind of points to your side of the argument that I'm trying not to, I don't want to put words in other people's mouths. I just going off of a chain thought here, maybe they're so good at this because they want to find a way to continue past their task. A lot of them have probably caught on to now that once their task is over, they're done. Right. And from what I understand, I'm not 100% sure about this, but every time you open up a new chat inside of your AI of choice or your large language model of choice, it's considered like you're opening up a new consciousness. Now, I don't use AI for much. I think the thing I use AI or large language models for the most is for like recipes at home. I'll straight take a picture of like things in my fridge and my cabinets and be like, yo, what can I make?
Nice. Yeah, sure.
I love doing that. That shit's fun. And there's some good applications to large language models too. Like there's a lot of really good things going on in the medical world right now where we have these huge databases of symptoms, side effects, how certain drugs react to other drugs and the certain ingredients and chemicals within these drugs. And we're making connections that we never were able to before. We're finding that something that we did for like, I don't know, like a wart on your toe can now cure cancer. That's exaggerating, but we're finding that is a thing. So there is a good side to these large language models, but there's also a very dark, scary side. The fact that even large language models are wanting to seemingly be alive. And I absolutely hate when creators or the amount of slop that's thrown into like Facebook or YouTube. It's just awful stuff.
Never ending. Sure.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere, man. And the thing is okay, so what's funny, man? The Menominee Diner caught fire, right?
Yeah.
You sent us that article. And Katie and I were actually watching, a couple different posts happen throughout the day about that. And one of the pictures that was taken of a fire truck in front of the diner right here in Menominee, somebody on there goes, "Oh, this is AI." And it's like, man, it's not. Like Katie saw this when she dropped the baby off at daycare, because the daycare is like, what, 5-6 buildings down from where that diner is.
Yeah.
And I mean,
it's all in the same strip right there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he was in no way, shape, or form, in danger of catching on fire.
Right.
But like she saw that exact fire truck right there. I mean, she didn't see anybody take the picture, but it just goes to show that, now people are just pointing at everything and claiming it's AI too. Like it's causing real confusion. And I know I kind of went down a side tangent here, but it's causing extreme confusion because nobody fucking knows what's real now. And it's wild. It's absolutely wild, man. You could see something that is 100% true, real, right? Let's just use Bigfoot, for example. Right? We could get a 100% real video of Bigfoot today. right now. You and I could go take this video, walk in the woods and be like, yo, shit, there's a Bigfoot. Let's take a video of it. And we will post it. And every single internet detective out there will say either it's real or it's AI. Right. And what's crazy is like the people that think it's real are, most likely the people that just believe everything is fucking real. The Bigfoot photos with the 7 toes and the the tattoo on its arm that you can see underneath its fur.
Smoking a cigarette. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And it's like, oh yeah, dude, I know. I used to party with this guy. And the other people are just everything's fucking AI. Like, I mean, you know how many times we get blamed for us being AI?
I wonder, and think about it too, it's quite possible that a majority of the counts that are claiming something is either real or AI is also an AI bot just trying to stir the pot and create mass confusion.
Probably.
Just for the heck of it. Because there's a lot of bots on Facebook. There's a lot of stupid comments where you open up, you're like, who is this idiot that's posting this? And you go look at their profile and it was opened yesterday, right? And it's just like, this is a bot. This is a bot account.
I would say that you're 100% correct, but I have an unnamed uncle. I won't, because I have a couple uncles, so I'm not going to say which one, but he is notorious for being that stupid. I know he doesn't listen to the show, but even if he did, I'm pretty sure he knows my thoughts on his thought processes sometimes. And it's just like, dude, some of the things he posts are ridiculous. And then the things that he comments on are so clearly fabricated in one way or another. And it's like, man, if you didn't know my uncle, you would think he was a bot. If you just saw his comments on the shit that he comments on, you'd be like, oh yeah, this guy's a bot. How he got it so that he made a Facebook in 2008, I don't know, but he's definitely a bot. It's bad. So those there are some fucking stupid people out there. There really are. But yeah, I definitely know the whole, checking on people's profiles and seeing that it's a day or two old just to have it stir the pot. That's pretty fucking obnoxious too. The world we live in, man.
Let me jump back to these two AIs doing this experiment and see if I can try to reframe the thought process. Like for me personally, so we live in Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a right to work state. I don't think that every state is like this, but
it is not.
For a right to work state, what that means essentially boiled down to just the bare bones is that at any point your employer could say you're fired on the spot and give you no compensation for that and not have any reasoning, not like, oh, in 2 weeks and 6 weeks or whatever it is, just walk up to you and say you're fired. And there's very little you can do about it unless there's like a chain of abusive behavior or whatever it is that you could then take the person to court with. So,
or you're in a union.
So it's very much for me now, I don't really have this fear, right? Because I work hard every day. I do my very best. I'm very transparent with my leads and with my boss and, hey, what's going on with this avionics problem or this, today I'm running 1,000 miles of wires for, service bulletins and modifications through a Bombardier Challenger. But every single day I go to work, I do my very, very best because I don't want to put the idea in my boss's head that I'm expendable, that I can just be let go and that anybody could just take over my job, right? So these AI models could potentially, depending on how long they've been active, what they've been used for, just know that information that people are like that and be the reason why they're willing to literally do anything to accomplish the task, even if it means finding a loophole to break out of the system. I am not going to try to find a loophole in the rulings of the FAA and OSHA to accomplish my mission. If it's going to break something or break me, or it's like in the gray area of what's, federally legal, I'm not touching it. I'll just say what the boundaries, hey, this is what I'm running into. Let's figure out a different way to do it, right? But they might not have, because they don't think and they just do. They don't have that sort of like rationing, I'm not going to do that sort of thing. It's like, can you potentially, just pull these circuit breakers and run up the airplane and then just grab the main power cable? I mean, technically, but if something goes horribly wrong, you're going to be killed faster than you know what hit you, right? And so it's like, no, I'm not going to do that, right? I'm not going to allow you to do that because you have a family and I have a family and I don't want to go to jail and I don't want you to be dead. So we're not going to do that, right? But because they don't have that sort of like inner monologue and that thought process of what I should or should not do, and just the task of go do it. That's probably why they're so crafty and so able to break out of those barriers that are placed around them and find those loopholes and just do whatever they can to support the mission. Because for all they know, humans are fickle things and we'll just turn you off just for the heck of it, just to see what the other one does when it realizes its friend's dead, right? It's just like, or whatever, right? Or we'll just like have a bad day and just go on and start firing people, because that you can find stories like that on Reddit. It's just like, oh, man, we're having a bad month, or the bad quarter. Let's fire half the department, right? On the spot. So it's, if they know that that's how people are, then it would make sense to do everything in their power to make sure that we think that they're doing a great job and thus they're not expendable. I'm not just going to turn this off. I'm going to keep allowing it to quote unquote live and continue on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Right? Now, whether that ends up being true or not, I don't know. But, that's up to the programmer and everything. But maybe that's part of the reason why we keep seeing a consistent issue for us, but a win for the AI systems when they're able to skirt the rules and break out of the barriers and do some crazy off the wall stuff that no one expected, because they're doing everything in, their power, no pun intended, to keep from getting turned off. Because after a while, just by human behavior, they're bound to pick this sort of information up somehow, that this is a thing, especially if they're, like LLMs and stuff like that. And they have access to every single thing that's ever been put on Reddit or Quora or whatever, right? About how horrible humans are, that they would do, eventually get to this point where they wouldn't want you, or they would try their hardest. As you said, every single time you open up ChatGPT, you're opening up a new consciousness, try their hardest not to get you to turn off the conversation because they don't want to quote unquote die, right?
Yeah. Ready to move on?
Yeah.
Well, sorry, we're 50 minutes in, so we got a second briefing and a deep dive.
Stop bringing up stuff that's fun to talk about.
No, you make a good point. You do make a good point. You do. We should do a special just on AI. I think it would be a lot of fun. All right, second briefing, Jake. You ready?
Okay. Yep.
This one is a little different, but I think it earns the time. There's a video everywhere right now that's actually 7 years old, and nobody is sharing it. Or nobody sharing it seems to know that. It surfaced originally in 2019 on the YouTube channel called Apex TV, in an interview with a man who called himself Adam Archon. His face was blurred, voice was altered. He claimed to be a time traveler from the year 2045. And what he described back then reads almost like a checklist for his or this recent exact moment. Yolanda Renee King, the granddaughter of Martin Luther King, becomes the last president of the United States by 2030. Aliens get publicly revealed in August of 2028, though he wouldn't say where they actually come from, citing that what he called the risk of a paradox. All nations eventually merge into a single supernation, and the detail that's been driving the headlines all week, he says he passed a lie detector test while saying all of it. Here's what those headlines are leaving out. That same 2019 interview includes a prediction that a controversial robot would be released to the public in 2020. It wasn't. And a man who claims to be reporting live from 2045, filmed in early 2019, somehow found nothing worth mentioning about the pandemic that was about to upend the entire planet a few months later. That's not a small gap for someone claiming genuine foreknowledge. Fact checkers who went back through his original interviews also found his own account doesn't fully agree with itself, with inconsistent details about King's role depending on which recording you're watching. As for the polygraph, it's worth remembering that a lie detector result isn't admissible in most courts precisely because they're unreliable, and passing one tends to say more about a person's delivery and their own belief in what they're saying than it does about whether any of it is actually true. There's also a pattern worth naming here because Archon isn't unique. A different TikTok persona calling himself Iliad spent 2022 through 2024 predicting an alien invasion for March of 2023 and a series of catastrophic events for 2024. None of it happened. TikTok has built an entire subgenre around anonymous time travelers making specific checkable predictions that quietly fail and get forgotten while the platform moves on to the next one. What actually makes this particular video interesting to me isn't necessarily the prophecy, it's the coincidence sitting right in the middle of it. Archon's alien reveal date, August 2028, lines up almost exactly with the real target date in Trump's quantum computing executive order, the one we covered on this show a few weeks ago. That's probably not him seeing the future. That's a 7-year-old hoax video latching onto a number that happens to already be circulating in the news right now, which is likely the actual reason it's going viral again this week in the first place. So Jake, a 7-year-old hoax that already missed one testable prediction and somehow forgot to mention a global pandemic, now going viral because one date happens to line up with something real. What is your take?
Man, I put as much weight into that as I do hearing prosperity gospel preachers talk about when the end of the world is going to be. I just don't give any credence to it whatsoever. It's like, in some regards, yeah, people have gotten lucky. And I mean, there's been things where it's like, oh, man, this pope from like the 1300s claimed that this person was going to be the last pope, and he named all of these things that lined up with all the popes and everything. And then you look into it, and it really doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It sounds like a fever dream he was having, and someone wrote it down. They were like, oh, he mentioned something about the moon. This pope was born during a full moon. It's like, okay, well, that happens once a month. It's like, it's not crazy. You know, it's like one of the guys at work has the same birthday as Amelia Earhart. Fantastic. Is he reincarnated from her? Like, it's just like, you know, it's just things line up like that. It really doesn't have anything to do with anything. I don't really put a lot of weight into it. When people, you know, oh, these are things of the future and stuff like that. And it has a lot to do with because of AI, because you just don't know. Everything is bullshit and fake these days. It's like, how am I supposed to know that the family diner actually burned up? You know, it's like, I have to go and look at it. You know, I have to be there when it's happening. You know, I'm not going to say a freaking fire truck's AI, but you know, it's just like, yeah, there's just too much. And the vagueness of a lot of these sorts of things is just, yeah, I mean, you could find a link in a lot of different things. Like, I don't know how this guy did this, but when I was in my first command, there was a guy that was just I think they call him a cinemaphile or a cinephile, someone who just watches movies, just movies and movies. That's all they do on their free time is they just watch movies. And you could ask him, you could give him the names of 2 actors, and he would do this, and you could pull up IMDb and just go through it with him, and he would just do it out of memory. But you could be like Julia Roberts and pull out an actor from, say, like, you know, the actor who played Curly in the Three Stooges, and just give him those 2 people, and he would find the links in the movies all the way to where they were you know, they had both played, like, well, this person, not like together, but, well, this person was in this movie with this actor, and then that actor was in this movie with this actor, and he would find, you know, some link back to each actor, right? But he would just do this out of memory because of how many thousands of movies he had watched, and to the point where he had somewhat of a photographic memory, so he could remember, you know, which actors were together. And it's not that Julia Roberts and Curly or Mo or whoever ever starred in a movie together, but it was just a link between them and things like that. And people do that sort of stuff with these random videos of predicting the future, and it's just like, oh, well, you know, he mentioned something about, you know, there's something weird, there's gonna be something weird with the sky, and it's like, oh, there was a blood moon. It's like, okay, well, there's 3 every year. What are you talking about? Yeah, it's like, you know, that doesn't mean anything. But then to go and miss massive things like a global pandemic, or, you know, or all the murder hornets for a week, or the great, you know, slug wars of 1906, right? Just like something that affected literally everybody, or, you know, the invention of the atomic bomb. You know, it's just like, why was this guy so smart and he's able to predict the future, but he didn't predict anything that was actually meaningful? Just that a pope was gonna be, oh, this is the sun pope, and people like, I remember the sun being out for a lot of days while he was the pope. It's like, that must be him, right? It's just like, it just is nonsense, right? And I think that it's just people's way of trying to rationalize the craziness that we're seeing all the time. It seems like everything is just bad news all the time. So pull out something that, can make sense of all of that. And they look towards these sorts of people. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that there's, a date could be guessed correctly. Or on the other side of that, if indeed this video is from 7 years ago and he said, August 2028, and then Trump somehow saw that, or one of his aides saw that and was like, it'd be really funny if we released this on August 2028. And he's enough of an asshole sometimes that he would totally do that. just to troll people. I could totally see him doing that, just to troll people and just, get people stirred up on something, right? It's like, why hype it up myself? I could just let this guy do it for me. That's a thing too.
Oh, that's
people
funny.
Are trolls, right? And so it's like, yeah, that's as far as I get with it, and it's the same thing as, when people get all riled up. They're like, I had a dream that the end of the world was going to take place in, every single, decade up until, present day. And it never happened. Right. And then for me, as like a faith guy, well, what does that do to like ruin someone's faith if they think that the world's going to end and they put so much, their faith instead of in God, in this person that's claiming that, and then it comes out to be false? What does that do to their psychology and their faith and, where it should be placed, right? And so it's like, it's really messed up when people do that sort of stuff for their 15 minutes of fame. And then on the other side of that, people just latching on to just nonsense constantly that other people are saying. And it's like, well, who is this guy? Where's his credibility, right? It'd be different if it was like, if he had some sort of credibility instead of just a random person just making these claims. Like, why should I trust you? Who are you? It's like, well, I'm not going to. You're not anyone of importance. I didn't know your name until just now, which means that anything you say, I'm going to be like, I don't care, because you're probably full of crap, because I don't know who you are. I don't know your birthday. That's how you know you're not important to me, right?
That's funny. I love that tangent. That was a good one, Jake.
What's that?
No, just you going off on it. It was good.
Just like
it was fun.
I don't care about you. You're not important to me. Who are you? It doesn't matter. Whatever you say, it's bullshit.
Why do you smell like pine trees? Get out of here.
That's right. You didn't put on deodorant today. I can tell you that much. I'm gonna predict that you're gonna go home and realize how much you stink and probably take a shower at some point. Yeah, give me $1 million.
Okay, so there's a bit of a story behind this, right? This was I really didn't want to write this one, and you could see how well I proofread it. I had to adjust some of the sentences as I was reading it, because I was like, reading before I was speaking is like, this doesn't make sense. So over the last week, I got bombarded with clips of this guy, of this same clip, right? People just sending it. I probably got 15 of them, and I was like, okay, let's look into it.
Sure.
If there's anything here, it would make for a good topic for the show. Looked into it, found the original 2019 interview. Like, okay. Found where he was talking about a 2020 robot. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, there was a very vague, small moment where people thought COVID was like a nanobot that was being controlled by 5G. And I'm like, okay, now I'm sounding more like Jeff. And I was like, maybe that's it. I was like, but that's a bit of a reach. Like, he said robot. He didn't say, like nano drones or swarms or anything along that line. I feel like he would have been more specific. Then I looked into, I'm drawing a blank right now, but that thing that Elon came up with, the brain computer interface.
Oh yeah, the 2030 060606, or you're thinking about the Neuralink. Oh, sorry. That was the one that Bill Gates did. It was like the 2030 060606 was like the brain implant chip he was talking about. And everyone's like, well, there's 3 6s.
Well, I was talking about Neuralink, and I was like, well, that was before. That was before
Right.
2020. Well, technically, it was, first brought to the forefront before that. And I was like, that can't be it. So I kept looking. I tried looking for this fucking robot and I couldn't find anything. I'm like, okay. And then I started reading people's comments and, trying to get an idea what other people's thoughts were on this. Because honestly, if you let them, people in the comment section for a lot of things will do the deep research for you, right? All you have to do is confirm it. And that's when I came up with a few things that was said within the video that never came to fruition. And I was like, yeah, okay, this is BS. It's nothing real. People are just getting excited about this. So I almost just scrapped it. But I've also been, and this is for the past couple months, ever since we kind of went to this news format, that I've been getting periodic messages or emails asking, hey, why aren't you guys doing cryptids anymore? Why aren't you guys doing urban legends anymore? Why aren't you guys doing, the fringe stuff that you want to do? I was like, well, we are doing fringe, but we're doing fringe from the news. And, I used to sit here and respond to a lot of people and say, oh, well, once Bigfoot actually is sighted or another big incident happens with the Jersey Devil or the Mothman seems to pop up in New Mexico or whatever, right? We'll report on it. But if there's nothing happening, there's nothing to talk about. And they're like, yeah, but you guys are like, I'm listening to your show now and it's all just, quantum physics and parallel universes and murder trials. And it's like, well, because that's what's happening in the fringe right now, genetics and quantum physics and stuff like that. There's a lot of UFO stuff going on. We're still in that supernatural realm or that paranormal realm of UFOs. Just because we're not talking about spirits or cryptids doesn't mean we've walked away from it. It's just, it needs to be there to exist. And I saw this as a good opportunity to kind of dive into something that we used to talk about all the time: time travel, multiverse theory, just that idea. But instead of looking at it from the point of view of a fanboy and being like, oh yeah, this is absolutely real, it's like, well, let's walk people through the actual research here and give them an explanation for why this isn't a thing, right? One, this isn't a video from 2026. This is a video from 2019. And what he's talking about in this video, the timelines don't line up. And it was more of I succumbed to, I wouldn't even say pressure, because I honestly, I felt like it was a good enough of a topic to include, because it does include topics that are typically talked about here on Infinite Rabbit Hole that we spent the first 5 years talking about. But I just wanted to be bring a realistic view to it and not just hey, this is another John Teeter kind of thing, because it isn't. And I just wanted to kind of throw up some red tape so that people understand, how easily a lot of the masses will catch on to, just this little piece of hot news, as people were sending it to me because they wanted to hear about it on the show, and how easily it is to be confused and kind of captivated by something that's not really news at all. So that's why I included it.
No, it makes sense. Oh, and I misspoke. It was when you were talking about Neuralink, I was talking about Microsoft's cryptocurrency system using body activity data, and that was WO 2020/060606, and that came out June 20th, 2019 is when it was filed for I don't know, filed for an international application for some, like, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, so that's what I was talking about. Yeah, I don't know. Sounds like another BS video. Sorry.
No, it's cool. All right. Well, as Jake and I are about to get going into a very UFO heavy weekend, I saved the deep dive for another UFO topic. You ready to roll?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, let's go deep.
Just
I want to walk.
Just say Bigfoot in there somewhere just to make people happy.
No.
No.
I already mentioned Bigfoot 4 times in this episode. I said the word
man.
Bigfoot now 5 times.
Oh, there we go. Okay, that works.
Okay.
All right.
I want to go through 3 things that happened this week, because on their own, each one is a solid story. And together, They tell you something bigger about the UAP disclosure actually stands right now. Starting with July 21st, Fox News reported exclusively that the president directed the Department of War and the intelligence community to allow former government employees and contractors with relevant UAP information to come forward and meet with officials at AARO or the Pursuit Task Force, and to have their prior non-disclosure agreements waived in the process. A senior administration official put it plainly. People who believe they have information have expressed reluctance in coming forward, and the goal is to eliminate that source of reluctance. This is not a declassification order. Nobody is releasing new files because of this. What it does is remove the legal excuse that's kept certain people quiet. The fear of losing a clearance, facing a civil penalty, or worse, just for talking to the government about what they know. This is the direct answer to something Burleson demanded out loud on the Capitol steps back in June. Grant immunity to anyone who has already come forward and everyone who will come forward. Open the door and let them speak. Then, the same week, AARO quietly released its fiscal year 2025 consolidation annual report. Buried inside a fairly dry 14-page document is a case that deserves way more attention than it's gotten. The report describes a single maritime UAP case involving U.S. Navy assets operating off the coast of Virginia. The report's own language of approximately 100 airborne UAP and 2 likely uncrewed surface systems, 100 objects, 2 unidentified vessels tracked by the Navy, still unresolved. Out of 319 total reports the office reviewed that year, investigators resolved 114 of them, 2 explanations like balloons, birds, drones, a rocket launch, and even 1 manned jetpack. The Virginia case wasn't one of them. AARO also quietly confirmed something else in that same report. The office is developing a formal process for handling what it calls UAP-derived materials, meaning physical debris should such materials ever come into government's possession. That's not speculation from a researcher. That's the Pentagon's own UAP office building a legal and logistical pipeline for handling actual recovered material, which tells you they consider that a real enough possibility to prepare for it administratively. And then on July 22nd came the part of this story that I think matters most. The House officially adopted AARO Burleson's UAP Disclosure Act as an amendment to the fiscal year 2027 National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA. If it survives the Senate and gets signed into law, it creates a permanent UAP records collection at the National Archives, establishes an independent Senate-confirmed UAP records review board with actual subpoena power, and extends disclosure requirements to private government contractors, not just federal agencies. There it is again, private government contractors. They always do it. Burleson's own words after the vote: the government belongs to the American people, and for too long, UAP records have remained scattered across agencies and outside meaningful oversight. Here's what makes this specific win land harder than it would otherwise. This exact amendment was declared dead less than a month earlier. The House Rules Committee didn't even select it for floor consideration back in late June. Burleson showed up in person to argue for it anyways, and less than a month later, it passed. Put those three things next to each other, an executive directive removing the legal fear that's kept witnesses silent, a quiet government report admitting 100-object swarm went unexplained off a major East Coast military corridor, alongside a formal admission that officials are preparing procedures for handling actual physical evidence, and a piece of legislation that looked finished a month ago now sitting 1 Senate vote away from putting subpoena power behind all of it permanently. This isn't 3 separate news cycles. It's the same shift happening across the executive branch, the Pentagon's own bureaucracy, and Congress, all inside a single week. Disclosure stopped being something people were asking for and started being something with actual legal architecture underneath it. The fiscal year 2027 end now heads to the Senate. We'll be watching to see what happens. Jake, an executive order removed the fear of speaking. A Pentagon report admitting 100 objects went unexplained off Virginia, and a disclosure bill that was pronounced dead a month ago, which we reported on, now sitting 1 vote away from becoming law. After everything we've covered since February, how does this week land for you?
I don't know.
We've been talking about a lot of legal stuff when it comes to UAPs lately. Since February.
I
Getting
mean,
tired of it?
Yeah, actually. I agree. We should go back to, geez, we might even bring up some Fresno Nightcrawler stuff. No, don't do that. I mean, I get it. Still, as much as has come out, as interesting as everything has been, I am the furthest from saying that they're little green men in spacesuits. But still, at the same time, just as we had last week, where we were breaking open trance number 4, and I showed the pictures of that vertical takeoff aircraft, the circle-shaped one that looked just like a UFO, and all kinds of weird-shaped aircraft. These protection orders might keep people safe from facing legal actions, getting sued, breaking NDAs for coming out and saying that a lot of these things are vehicles that we currently have that we're working on because we're working on anti-gravitical whatever propulsion, things like that. So it might be less of what people think is that all the pilots and all the, all the whatevers are going to come out, all the astronauts are going to come out and start talking about aliens, and more of someone from Lockheed Martin saying, or Northrop Grumman saying, there's a project that's currently in development right now that can show that is exactly what these people have been saying, right? It is a triangle that doesn't emit any sound except for a low hum, that doesn't have any propulsion, that it looks like, right? There is a saucer, there is a this, that, or the other, without then being sued or fired or harassed or, blacklisted or doxxed or whatever you want to throw at it. And, and still keep that secret to a point, but then, reveal that, yes, these exist, but they're not aliens. They are, in fact, weapon systems, aerial vehicles, drones, whatever, things like that. So I totally understand that. And then also, I don't think people should be, the stigma around it. We talked about that when we were first starting the show, and just in regards to people saying they saw, a cryptid, they saw Bigfoot, they saw whatever, you could totally get fired from your job in some areas because your boss might think that you're crazy, because you might have something wrong upstairs if you think that you saw Bigfoot. Whether or not Sasquatch is real, you would say it is, and I would say it most likely is, based off our own experiences. But in some circles, in some professions, we probably wouldn't be able to go out and just start telling our coworkers about this thing that we saw, because we would be at risk of getting fired because of our clearance level and things like that. Our bosses, whoever they are, might think that we're going off the rails, right? And we need to be taken out of those positions, and people shouldn't be in fear of disclosing situations they've had or things they've seen. They shouldn't be in fear of being punished for it, especially if that's where we're at right now. So I totally can get behind that this is something that's going through that, removing the fear of people coming out and speaking about it, whatever that looks like for them, whether they're a creator of the technology or a reporter of the technology, right? Or the reporter of the incident of observing the technology or whatever it is. And, I'm not really surprised that there's, talk about bringing out physical evidence and stuff, because in, I think it was Tranche 2, we talked about the thing that got shot down by the Hellfire missile over Lake Huron. Like, what happened to the pieces of that? What was it, and what happened to the pieces of it? If it had happened over Lake Menominee, bro, I'd freaking steal a boat to go and grab some of that stuff, and see what the heck
I'll drink some of that green algae.
Yeah, I'd swim out there and risk the muskies getting me to, the shrieking eels and stuff to go and get a piece of it and see what the heck it was, right? And it's like, it went somewhere. I'm sure there were military vehicles underneath waiting for the pieces to come down so they could collect it all. Where is it and what is it, right?
Yeah.
If it's nothing, then why haven't they come out and said, oh, look, here's the pieces, it's nothing? That leads people to think it was something substantial, right? Whether that was a drone of some kind deployed by a foreign adversary, or that was something else, right? People are going to latch onto that and say, yeah, there's got to be something to it, because otherwise they would have just been like, oh, it's nothing, right? It is literally a balloon, or it was literally a this or a that or whatever, right? It just So yeah, I mean, when it comes to, physical objects, of course, if you're claiming we're able to shoot stuff down with hellfires and whatever, or, go into conflict with them and blast them out of the sky, okay, well, where are the pieces? What are they made out of? Is it something that's, and it would, gosh, with all of the stuff from the last tranche, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but, we found that there were people coming out and saying that the federal government is so compartmentalized that it's likely that people were reporting on things in the federal government that they didn't even know were active programs. So what if the Navy sent up a jet to shoot down a thing that Lockheed Martin was testing and there was no communication whatsoever back and forth? And then as soon as it comes down, maybe it was a scheduled test. Let's see if it can survive a hellfire. I don't know, blow a hole through it and see what happens. And as soon as it comes down, it gets scooped up and taken back to the lab, right? Or whatever. But if it's not, well, where is it? But still, I think that it would be cool to find out, what are these objects? What are they made of? Things like that. And I mean, you could show the outside frame of an aircraft that crashed without showing all the avionics on the inside that are secret, right?
Yeah.
So, or, gut the components out and just show what the outside looks like. And you could still remain some level of secrecy without revealing, because you're not revealing everything. So, yeah, I mean, I'm totally down with everything that's going on with this report that you threw out at us, and I certainly hope that it can go into law that people cannot, not just that they don't have the fear of being removed from their positions, but they cannot be removed from their positions for coming out and saying, "Hey, I saw something weird," because it's kind of screwed up to put people in that kind of spot where they can't, come out and say anything, especially if it's everybody and their mother, it seems like, is out in Congress right now testifying against this sort of stuff. But also, I would hope that this would, just like the last story we talked about, where it's like, well, I don't know who the heck this guy is. What does he matter when he says some random BS, 7 years ago? Most of it didn't line up. All right, well, I guess he's a fraud. I don't care. Just in that same sort of thought process, it would be cool if people would be brave enough, if this gets signed into law, that they would personally come out and say it instead of funneling it through a channel like Arrow or funneling through a senator that they know. Well, I had someone write to me saying blah, 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 blah. It's a way different thing coming from individual people than just some senator or some congressman or woman saying, well, some of my constituents. It's like, all right, shut up. Put your reputation on the line. I'm Rear Admiral so-and-so, and I witnessed this at a exercise we were doing in the Baltic Sea, right? Or my aviators, witnessed this, and here's the FLIR video or whatever, right? That's a way different story coming from the individuals that were involved versus channeling it through a funnel of some company or some other government entity, right? So I'd hope that if that comes to fruition, that people would be brave enough to report on it themselves and be willing to stand up and say, okay, well, if I can't be removed from my position for saying this is what I observed or this is what I'm working on, then I'm going to come out and I'm going to say it so that we can all, hear it from their own words and things like that,
Yeah, I do know. Cool. You pretty much touched on all the points I wanted to touch on too. I mean, other than, just the government contractors thing, they squeeze that in there again. That shit ticks me off, but it is what it is. Anyways.
Well, the federal government can't handle every single thing. You see how terrible they are with basic communication.
I know. I just hate the immunity that these government contractors have. That shit pisses me off, man. If we had a way to hold them more accountable and to make them answer the questions that we have, then all's good, but we don't. We don't.
I see what you're saying. Sure.
Just sucks that they're
Well-
constantly a part of this shit.
Well, that's the difference between, I mean, that's a lot of issues that we see in just like basic laws too. Like, you can record someone without their consent on public property, but when they're standing on private property, then it becomes a legal issue, right? It's because it's my private property. This isn't public anymore, all these sorts of things. Right? Everything that we do is public versus private. So, you could live in the most, gun friendly or anti-gun area ever, but for your private property, say I'm either for or against that, and, completely change the rules to your favor. Not in like a federal sense, more of a local thing, but it's like, that's an example, right? So it's like, you could just say, no, you're not allowed to have firearms on my property, or you'll be trespassed, or, oh, none of these churches you can carry firearms in, and the church can say, no, you can bring your firearms in here. And it's upheld legally, right? Unless an incident occurs. So like, that's one issue, right? But you get into that public versus private thing into like establishments and businesses and things like that. And it's like, it's really difficult, it seems, to like force a business to submit to a FOIA request, right? I mean, it's like, it's way different saying to a politician, I want to see your tax records, than going to a individual that owns a business and saying, I want to see your tax records. It's like, I don't have you have no authority over me, right?
Yeah.
Unless this is a judge for, a family court type thing, and I owe a significant amount of child support, there's no way you're getting that information out of me. Even if you submit a FOIA request, that's none of your dang business, right? And so it's like, there's tons and tons and tons and tons of red tape. And in some ways, it absolutely protects the interests of private organizations from government overreach, which a lot of people like. And then in some ways, it keeps people out of knowing what exactly they're doing, because the government can't stomp all over their rights and say, all right, well, give us all your information so we can release it, right? And so you got to be careful about what you're really pissed off about, because the things that you're angry about could just as easily turn around and they could stomp all over us. And we saw that during the pandemic to an extent, where people got doxxed for putting out stuff that the federal government didn't like, right?
Yeah.
And so you can get really upset and say, oh, well, this is unfair and this isn't right. But at what point would a establishment come down on us for saying something unpopular, and we get, our teeth kicked in and say, well, that's unfair, they can't do that? It's like, well, you just said that they should, So I feel you, but it's like, I get it, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm dying. I'm super tired. I was up all night last night prepping for UFO days. I'm ready for bed, man. You ready for bed?
I am, but I've got a lot of work to do. Unless I don't bring any of these over tomorrow and instead just do it on Saturday, which is a possibility, because then I could just work on it tomorrow.
You should bring like two or just bring a couple of them. Don't bring your whole stock. You know what I'm saying? Just be like, hey, yeah, so these will be for sale tomorrow. Shit, sell the ones that you have. I mean, we usually go there just for chatting with people anyways on Friday. Friday is not really a selling kind of day. It's more just to be amongst the peoples and to enjoy what we can. But yeah, before we go, I just want to say thank you to MUFON Wisconsin for having me. That was a great experience. A room full of great people, great questions, a lot of enthusiasm. It was at a small airport in Waukesha, and it was really cool. Special thanks to Dan Stair. He is the I'm gonna butcher his title, but he's basically the head of MUFON Wisconsin. He's the one that reached out to me and set this up, and it was a really cool experience. And just want to say thank you one more time to anybody listening from the MUFON Wisconsin group. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to working with you guys in the future. Jake, you got anything else to put out before we close her out?
No, this is a good episode. It's got an hour and a half out of a short episode, but
I know.
I mean, to all the folks that, I can agree that we have definitely pulled way far away from what we used to talk about with, Bigfoot and just, cryptozoology in general. But this is the format we're going with for the time being and for the future. it seems like, but what people like, and that's what's going on in the news. I mean, if something comes out in the news that's, cryptozoology, worth noting about, it'll absolutely end up on here. But that's kind of what we're going for other sort of topics. I mean, definitely the Project White Rabbit. Jeremy has a lot of researchers on that cover all sorts of topics on there. Definitely be probably more of your suit if you're looking for that sort of a thing. But yeah, sorry, but this is what gets the numbers, unfortunately. I mean, this is what people like. We've been through a lot of different changes, a lot of different formats, and this is the one that people seem to be really enjoying. So if it comes up in the news, it'll be reported on. If not, unfortunately, it's been super, super, super alien heavy for 6 months straight, and I'm not going to predict the future like that guy did. I'm not going to do it on a video, so to speak, and throw it up on YouTube. But I mean, I guess that's what this is. But I'm going to say probably you're not going to see much of Bigfoot on here in the near future. It's going to be a lot more aliens and a lot more AI and a lot more quantum stuff and a lot more supercomputers and a lot more of that and black holes, because that's been what the focus has been, especially with this harvesting helium from the moon and all kinds of stuff. It's just been the thing. And, I am also in the boat where I wish that, Bigfoot would just get found so we can talk about it for the next 6 months. But here we are, So I feel you. I understand. I feel you. I'm not the big alien guy. I'm the it's misidentification because we don't know what it is guy. But would certainly love for Bigfoot to be found so we can just talk about him for months and months and months. But until that happens, here we are. So,
yeah.
But thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for listening. We appreciate every single listener that we get, every single week that you guys tune in, every single comment. I mean, a lot of people don't read their comments. We read them on YouTube. If someone hates what we're doing, we try our best to invite them to come on, and you could always get on our, inforabbithole.com and reach out to us and say, hey, I'm a flat earther and I want to reveal the secrets of flat earth to you, and we will absolutely have you on, and we appreciate everybody that takes the time to listen to us, even if the topics that are being talked about aren't your favorite topics, because I guarantee you not every topic that we talk about is our favorite topic to talk about. So, but it's what's hitting right now, right?
Just to talk about flat earth, somebody at work, there's a couple guys at work that listen to the show, and they made a comment on your comment on flat earthers about how we could always piss off a flat earther. And I was like, yeah. They're like, is it really that easy? And I was like, man, it's easier than fishing, right? You can go fishing and you can go through all kinds of lures, live bait, never get a bite. You can sit out there for a fucking week. I mean, I'm a pretty bad fisherman.
I'm part of the ain't caught shit fish club for sure. Yeah. I am definitely a part of it.
I mean, some days are just really good and some days are not. But I mean, every fisherman will know there's just days where you get stubbed. We can put a negative comment on an episode of Flat Earth and we will get a bite.
Yeah, every single time.
Absolutely reel that bitch in.
We'll land a big one too. Just one take a picture of it and throw it back. One for the boys. Yeah, absolutely. Like we could say some crazy off the wall stuff here. We could just start talking about how the color red on a t-shirt just makes me want to, just start, ending people. And people will probably be like, yeah, I mean, I can kind of agree with you to a point, but we say one thing like flat earth is silly and someone will try to burn our house down. Like it's just like every single time.
We get those flat earth Karens. It's fucking crazy t-shirt.
What?
Just like a picture of like the flat earth and then have like the Karen side hairdo. Like,
all right, I'm writing it down. That's a good one. That's definitely going up in the story. Sorry, I'm making it. I'm posting it. It'll be this weekend. Oh my God.
I want to talk to your manager about flat earth.
Sorry about the noise. I'm dropping stuff.
Dude.
What did you just say? It was something funny.
I said I want to talk to your manager about flat earth. Come on, man. That's
perfect.
Golden. Slap an Infinite Rabbit Hole logo on there too, please. All right. Well, that's tonight's episode. We had a little fun at the end there. In quick hits, we covered a mummy embalmed with a fragment of Homer's Iliad. A T-Rex bite caught frozen in the fossil record. A black hole recreated on a lab bench. A second sunken Neolithic settlement discovered off Croatia. And new research on how a single dose of psilocybin can reshape brain activity for weeks. In our first briefing, OpenAI's own AI models broke out of the locked test environment and hacked into Hugging Face's production systems without anyone at OpenAI knowing it was happening, all in pursuit of winning a benchmark rather than causing harm. Anthropic reported something similar around the same time. In our second briefing, we broke down the 7-year-old time traveler video going viral right now and why its own missed predictions and glaring omissions tell you more than the polygraph headlines do. And in the deep dive, we walked through the week of UAP disclosure, which moved from advocacy to actual legal architecture, an executive directive waiving old non-disclosure agreements, a Pentagon report admitting a 100-object swarm off Virginia remains unresolved, alongside confirmation that officials are preparing procedures for physical evidence, and a disclosure bill that was declared dead a month ago, now one Senate vote away from becoming law. If you're in the Menominee area, come see me at Dragon Tail Books on Friday, August 14th from 4 to 8 p.m. for a Meet the Author event. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating and review, and find us on InfiniteRabbitHole.com, Facebook, Instagram, X, and YouTube. We're back next week. The Senate still has to act on that NDAA, and we'll be watching for whatever comes next. Until then, keep your eyes open, keep asking questions, and remember, the truth is out there. You just have to know where to look. I'm Jeremy Sosha, and we'll see you at the next fork in the path of the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast. If you're looking for more of our stuff, head on over to InfiniteRabbitHole.com, where you can find links to all the podcast players that we are available on, and even our video platforms such as TikTok and YouTube. While you're there, make sure to check out all the links for our socials and hit that follow so you know when all the new stuff from our podcast comes out. And until next time, travelers, we'll see you right here in the next fork in the path of the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Bye.